What's up, guys? This is the Edge DFS. We're talking showdown, Sunday Night Football, Steelers at the Bills. My name is Tyson Smith. I'm joined by Ellie Hernandez. Ellie, what's up, man? How are you?
Pretty good, man. Just watching some of the fights tonight. I've got some interesting ones. Lost a pretty big parlay because of some dumbass KO that probably shouldn't have happened, but I probably shouldn't have bet the parlay. So, you know, that's Saturday night for you.
It's going to be a busy time over Christmas. We got, obviously, NFL. We got NBA coming back. We're going to have some shows with NBA. We're going to try to go live doing that, so that's going to be a lot of fun. I love NBA DFS, by the way. And I'm sure there'll be some MMA going on. Like, there's a lot to do, and thankfully we'll both have some time off, and we'll be able to really pump out a lot of shows. So hit that subscribe button, like the videos. We really appreciate it. This is our full version of the Showdown show here. This is usually over an hour long. We get really deep into things, but we're also, we've experimented in the past with doing a quick slant version, which is 15 minutes or less. We'll actually have that have one of those episodes out for this particular matchup as well, so keep an eye on that. If you don't have time to do the hour plus episode, please check that one out. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts. We're on all those different platforms, so check us out there if you're moving around and you can't watch the videos. So we appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. So, Ellie, we're doing Steelers versus Bills here, man. What are your thoughts on this matchup here?
I'm actually kind of excited for it, man. This should be a pretty fun game. It may not... let's put it this way. Even if the DFS guys don't smile upon me tomorrow night, I'll still watch the game pretty wholeheartedly and intently. This has a lot of playoff implications and it's going to impact seeding. So I really think, it's going to be a competitive game. I'm kind of excited for this one.
Playoffs?
I usually don't state.
Don't talk about playoffs. Yeah. You kidding me?
I usually don't say
Playoffs?
that about the Steelers.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, look, okay, so let's take a step back. We had, our Patriots versus Rams breakdown. I felt like we did a pretty good job with calling things out, but man, at least me, I was completely wrong on that one. We thought the Patriots had a chance to win that game. Man, that team just cannot throw the ball, and we knew this, but I was hoping that Bill Belichick somehow would figure a way for them to at least be competitive, but it didn't work out for us.
Well, they didn't do the one thing we talked about it on the show, right? I mean, what needed to happen was they needed to stop Cam Akers, they needed to stop the run game, and put the game on Jared Goff's shoulders. That they were clearly unable to do that. I mean, Cam Akers had the best Rams rookie performance since like 1978 or some shit, and obviously that's a exaggerated statistic, but 160, 170 yards. I mean. And plus, it doesn't help us when we were kind of leaning towards a fade of that guy. So,
look up the graphic. I literally faded him. I had none of him, and it is what it is. I was banking on the fact that they were so inconsistent with their carries, and that we haven't really. It hasn't been proven to us that he's the guy yet, but now he is. We all know he's the guy. So now I don't think I'll be making that mistake again.
Well, again, I mean, even the fade kind of worked in the way that we were predicting the game to go, right? We were projecting a completely different type of game, and that's just not what happened.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I did end up getting exposure to Cam Akers kind of last minute because when I saw the final ownership projections, he was like less than 5% of the captain, and maybe I think 35% or lower just overall. So that did help me out a little bit, so I didn't lose my entire ass, but. Yeah. I think we got a lot of that right. It just so happened Cam Akers had a fucking ceiling game.
That's how it is with Showdown, man. Sometimes you just have to fucking forget about it and move on. All right, so speaking of moving on, let's go to the Steelers versus the Bills here. Let's look at the Vegas lines. Let's look at everything here, the totals. The interesting thing here is Buffalo's actually favored in this game slightly. This is pretty much a pick 'em at this point. But Buffalo's minus 131, 56% win probability. The spread is -2 and the total is 48.5. So it's nothing to write home about when it comes to the total. It's a little bit lower than we're used to seeing this year, but also, Pittsburgh versus Buffalo, you'd think it'd be a little bit higher, but there has been some COVID-related stuff going on with Pittsburgh and a little bit with Buffalo. Nothing really to write home about. But when you see this, I know Pittsburgh is visiting Buffalo, so maybe that's why it's a little bit different, and Pittsburgh's not favored. But I mean, it doesn't really matter in my opinion. There's no crowds. It's not like they're traveling across the country. Why is Vegas overreacting to the fact that Pittsburgh, they lost one game. It was against Washington. They had a tough time against a depleted Buffalo team. Or, I'm sorry, a depleted Baltimore team. Why are they not favored here? What do you think?
I think one thing you got to keep in mind is that Buffalo is the home team. I mean, if Pittsburgh was the home team, then they would probably have a 5-point spread here, and it would go towards Pittsburgh. So those 3 points, they impact stuff. That little bit of a home field advantage. And I may have fucked up my math on that. So sorry, guys, if I was wrong there. But
probably be Pittsburgh -1 sort of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. So again, I don't think this is a bad call, right? I think it's difficult to kind of see what version of the Buffalo Bills we're going to get, and Pittsburgh also hasn't been very consistent this year either. I mean, Washington has a really, really good defense, but they really had no business beating Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh lost that game, so that's kind of scary to me. And Mike Tomlin called it out a little bit earlier. I don't know if you plan on doing horse's mouth with this, but it's not an injury or anything. But I mean, he's not going to play these receivers if they keep dropping balls, right?
Yeah.
And this. Other than Claypool, right? This has been an ongoing issue. Them and the Packers both have had issues with their receivers being able to hold on to the football.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it is something that is worth keeping an eye on. There's been a little bit of movement. I think it went a little bit towards Buffalo today, but Josh Allen he's the guy, man, and I really think this game really depends on what Josh Allen we get. It's very possible we could get a 200-yard Josh Allen with 3 picks.
Yeah.
But I think that guy's gone. I don't think that's the Josh Allen we see anymore. So those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, like Deontay Johnson, we all saw him drop a shitload of balls against Baltimore, which was interesting. For whatever reason, Chase Claypool I don't know what's going on. I don't know if he's just not being worked into the game plan or whatever. He's just not getting the snaps that he should be getting. Maybe it's the, Deontay Johnson factor, the fact that he is coming on as like almost a number 1 guy. I think it's clear he's the number 1 guy right now. Can he be a number 1 guy in the future? I don't know. But to me, maybe that's the reason why Claypool is sort of getting that number 3 role and getting the number 3 snaps. It's just interesting because this guy was lighting the world on fire, and I think he has that upside. He has that talent. He has those high upside plays in him. I just don't know why he's not getting the snaps he has the talent for. I don't know why. So that's something to keep an eye on. When it comes to these receivers, we'll talk about that. It's going to be tough again. It's tough. We've done many Steelers shows. It's super tough to figure out who the hell is going to get the ball. We know that Deontay Johnson is going to get targets. Can he catch those balls, and will they result in touchdowns? That's another thing. So let's move on to injuries here. There's not a whole lot to talk about, thankfully. This makes things a little bit easier for us. So we have James Conner, who's probable. I think he's going to play. I haven't looked into the actual. We're not doing horse's mouth today, unfortunately. I didn't have time to break that stuff down. But it looks like James Conner is probable. He should come back. Have you heard anything about Conner? I mean, he should play, right?
Yeah, he should play. And Draftkings has everything priced like he's going to. Yeah. So I don't expect him to sit.
Just keep an eye on things. We've all seen, the Dez Bryant's being ruled out 30 minutes before kickoff. Pittsburgh has been plagued by COVID. So just keep an eye on things right up until lock. Don't leave don't put in more money you're comfortable with unless you're able to sit in front of your computer up until it locks. John Brown is continued to be out. He's been out for a minute now with an ankle injury, so that opens up some other receiver options for the Bills. We'll get into that. So just seeing James Conner playing. Obviously, we're going to break down the running backs, but how does that affect your opinion on this running game for the Steelers. It hasn't been very impressive, and with a guy that's $8,000, I believe he is. I don't know that it's even if he does play. I don't know that I'm going to be high on him.
Yeah, I think we'll get into it a little bit more. I think on the running back side, but honestly, I'm not going to spend too much time on them. I do like a little bit of James Conner just because of his pricing. I think he makes for an interesting play overall. But honestly, and not to give away the house right now, but I think Benny Snell at 1,400 is incredibly interesting because what if this is another he's got the shits from situation, right?
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin isn't a guy. They're in a good enough spot where they don't need to stress some of these guys out. So I think it's worth having some exposure, but I'm not going to go in on him like I normally would at that price.
Yeah, agreed. And we just don't, that Baltimore game. They were up. They just didn't run the ball. They kept passing. I missed out on the game last week, that Washington, that Tuesday game. I wasn't able to actually watch it. How was their run attack in that game? Was it pretty good?
Pittsburgh?
Yeah, Pittsburgh's against Washington when they lost. I'm assuming they just fucking passed the ball a bunch again.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened, man.
He had 53 attempts. He had 53 attempts last week. Big Ben.
Yeah, one of our viewers called it out. I think it was for that slate specifically.
Yeah, no, he did. He called it out. Yep.
Yeah, and as much as I like getting some exposure to the running backs, these attempts can't be ignored. I mean, 33 completions, and you're essentially going to 3 or 4 guys, right? It's the 3 wide receivers, and Eric Ebron's getting a little bit of love.
Yeah.
So it's essentially a running game. I mean, Deontay Johnson's essentially a running back. Some of these targets that he's getting is fucking Keenan Allen worthy, right?
Yeah.
Like that's ridiculous. He's not Keenan Allen. He shouldn't be getting that amount of targets.
Yeah.
So, I think that plays a lot into how we're going to build tomorrow night too. Because it's not worth paying up $8,000 for James Conner if he's going to get 12 attempts.
It's just so interesting because you're used to the Steelers just running the shit out of the ball. We're used to these, big guys, Jerome Bettis, these big guys that run the ball and they just pound it. That's how they play football. Now they're throwing the ball 50 plus times. It's really interesting how things are working out for them now. But it seems to be working. Look, they're 11-1. I think they're overrated, but they're not that overrated. I think they're a good team. I don't think they have a chance to beat Kansas City in the playoffs, in my opinion. So, anyways, let's get right into it here. Let's just break this down. All right, so you got Josh Allen at 12.2K, which is kind of interesting to me. He's got the rushing upside. What's interesting to me, not his price, but the difference between him and Ben Roethlisberger in pricing. You have Ben Roethlisberger, Big Ben at 10.8K, and Josh Allen at 12.2K. How are you handling these guys? I don't think you can fade either of them, in my opinion. That's just me. You can't fade Josh Allen unless you think he's going to have one of those crazy sort of random games like you said earlier where he has a lot of mistakes and it's just a complete shit show for him. I just don't see that happening, especially when we're talking about, playoff matchup here.
Playoffs?
And, Ben Roethlisberger at 10.8K is very tempting. I think that's just maybe a little bit lower than he should be. So I think it's easy to take advantage of both of these guys. What do you think?
Yeah, man. I think Josh Allen's looking at a floor pretty much, 16 to 17 points. He's only had one game where he's been under 15 or 17 points, really, and that was against New England. So who the fuck knows about that game?
Yeah, and they won. So it doesn't matter,
Yeah, and look, I'm with you on this. I think you got to play both. They're both getting an extremely large amount of attempts. Like the volume's there, so I don't know how you don't get as much of both of these guys as you possibly can. I won't have either in my captain spot, like usual. That way I can lock them into to all my lineups. They will be locked.
Yeah, me too. I'm not gonna leave one of these guys out. I think you just gotta have them. I mean, Big Ben, he's had his 13, his 17, his 15, his 10-point games throughout the season. And yeah, there's an opportunity for that to happen. I just don't see it here. I think this I think the total is a little bit lower than I think it is. I think this, if I'm putting my money on it, I'm betting the over in this game. Even though Pittsburgh hasn't been as good as they should be lately, I think they're going to come out passing the ball like crazy. I think Big Ben is, as long as he gets you over 20-something points, I think he'll end up in the optimal. And we all know that Josh Allen can easily score 2 rushing touchdowns and throw for 300 yards. So to me, I like Josh Allen more than Big Ben, even though Big Ben is priced a little bit lower. And they're right around the same ownership, of course. The quarterbacks are going to be the top. As long as these quarterbacks are halfway decent, they're going to be the top 2 owned guys on the slate, every single showdown slate. So for me, I don't think I need to get different when it comes in the flex with both of these guys. I'll put them both in the flex. And maybe I'll leave out Ben Roethlisberger in a couple of lineups. Maybe I'll end up with probably 80% of him overall. None of which is going to be in the captain. I will consider playing Josh Allen in the captain, maybe in a couple lineups, and try to get different with some super low-owned guys, some dart throws. But besides that, I'm not going to target either of these guys in the captain. Well, the interesting thing is Josh Allen is out-projecting Ben Roethlisberger by I think 6 or 7 points or something. I don't know where you're seeing on yours. I think that's a little much to me. I think that recency bias is kicking in. We all saw 2 weeks in a row that the Steelers have been struggling. The coach has been getting down on them. This is still a very good team. They're not the best team in the AFC, but they're still a very, very good team, and they have a very high-powered offense with a lot of options. I don't see Ben Roethlisberger being that much lower scoring than Josh Allen. I understand that Josh Allen has the rushing upside, and 40 yards is obviously like a passing touchdown, so that really increases things. But to me, I'm going to get both of them, more leaning towards Josh Allen. All right, so let's move on. Let's move over to running backs for Buffalo here. So we've got Devin Singletary at 5,800. He's pretty low owned. Zach Moss at 4,800. I don't even know where to go here, man. Zach Moss was pretty much benched. Didn't he fumble on the first drive?
Yeah.
He was pretty much benched right away, right? What happened?
Yeah, he fumbled pretty quickly, backed up on his goal line. So
that's right, and he turned it back over. Yeah, you're right.
Right, so that's kind of why they took him out. Honestly, I don't think either in a bad spot at that pricing, 48 and 5,800. My biggest concern with both of them is the Steelers' defense is pretty good. So I just think it's going to be difficult for them to get going. But Devin Singletary does have the ability to get involved in the pass game a little bit. Zach Moss, I don't think we're going to see much of.
Yeah.
I think that fumble may impact his overall usage, right? Even if he sees the field 40% of the time, that's still a little bit less than what I want to see from my RB1.
Yeah.
But again, I didn't say this when we were looking at the Vegas stuff, but as far as the total goes, I think this is a little bit of a low total, right? I think with the amount of passing that we're going to see from the Steelers, I think that the Bills are going to go out there and just try and run the ball down their throat. Their strength is Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, Peter Gabriel Davis. Sorry, guys. Yeah. In your eyes. Anyways, so look, I think this is going to be more of a passing game than what we're expecting and what Vegas is expecting. So I think. I just don't think they're going to get the volume either guy. But at 5,800, you can't really ignore that price, especially if he's going to be low owned.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Dawson Knox is 4,600. So if I'm going to be that tight, I may as well have some exposure to Devin or Zach Moss. But yeah. I'm talking maybe 15-20%.
I mean, look, Devin Singletary is potentially under 20% owned in this matchup. And if he's under 20% owned, fuck me. I'm just gonna put him in a shitload of lineups because 20% owned, the running back on a team that's favored. I know it's a pick 'em basically, but look, this team has been on a roll. The Steelers have not been doing amazing lately. And look, Baltimore, I know Baltimore has a great running game, but they were so heavily injured in that game, and they still did really well in the running game against the Steelers. And so how did they do in Washington? How did Washington do? I know Antonio Gibson got injured. You watched the game. I didn't get a chance to actually physically watch it. How was the running game for Washington against Pittsburgh?
It wasn't great once Gibson went down. They were able to get a little bit of what's his name? Fucking
McKissick?
Peyton.
Oh, Peyton Barber. Peyton Barber.
Peyton Barber. Yeah, they were trying to get him a little bit of run, and he was doing okay. But McKissick had a shitload of targets, man. I think he had 9 receptions. So,
wow.
I mean, that's something to keep in mind too. If the defensive backs are all playing tied up on these wide receivers, you might have Devin Singletary or get these running backs open in the open field on little dump off routes, right? But again, one thing I don't want to necessarily forget about is Chase Young said the Baltimore Ravens exposed the Steelers offense.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
They're playing some good teams now, right? So I want to see if that's really the truth, or if Mike Tomlin was able to make some adjustments on that side of the ball. Oh shit! Knocked my fucking tripod.
Oh, you all right?
But yeah. Anyways, I think. I don't know, man. I think both these guys are in play, just not much. But Devin Singletary, if he's less than 20% owned, I'm with you.
Yeah, exactly. But look, okay, so last week, Devin Singletary had 83% of the snaps, and Zach Moss had 14%. Now, we know why. But the week before that, correct, Zach Moss had 64, and Devin Singletary had 43. So it's interesting there. Is it just because of the fumble? If that's the case, this coach isn't gonna fucking just bench him for the rest of the year. He's gonna Zach Moss is a young player. He's not gonna want to destroy his confidence. He's gonna want to typically speaking, you got a guy who fumbles, you put him back in the next play and you hand him the damn ball, get him his confidence back. There could be a situation where Zach Moss comes in and gets a lot more carries this week because you got to keep his confidence up. So if that's the case, and I'm just guessing here, but yeah, if that's the case, I like Zach Moss more too.
Now, was that against the Chargers where he saw the heavy volume?
That's a good point. Let's look it up.
Okay.
Yeah, it was against the Chargers. Yeah, they won 27-17.
Yeah, I mean that's still only 9 carries. If he was on the field that much, he had carries and 2 targets. So let's see what Singletary did that week. I mean, if you're on the field that much, just as a blocking back, that's kind of concerning to me.
You're right. I mean, he did run 18 routes, so maybe he just wasn't targeted as many, and that's a lot more than Singletary typically runs. Singletary maybe will get 12, 13 routes run. Zach Moss ran 18, and then in week 10 he ran 15, and then last week he only got 2 routes run. So what I'm trying to say is, if Zach Moss is put in, he's not going to get as many carries as Devin Singletary, but if he's on the field, he has those reception abilities. And for 4,800, it's priced a little bit high in my opinion for a guy who may not see the field. If he was under 4K or around 3K, then maybe he'd be more appealing. Just keep that in mind when you're building. Don't just completely just forget about Zach Moss, because the 48, that 4,000 to 6,000 range, you kind of forget about those guys sometimes. And just keep an eye on that kind of stuff. All right, so let's move over to the other side of the ball here. This is going to be interesting to talk about. You've got James Conner. He's priced up to about 8,000. He's most likely going to play. To me, I just don't feel like he's going to get enough volume if he does play, and we just haven't seen him in a few weeks. So I just don't know how currently how the Steelers are playing. I don't know if that works into his favor, or if it hurts him. I don't know how to project or predict how many carries, how many touches James Conner will get. Benny Snell at 1,400 is really appealing. Obviously, look, if James Conner doesn't play, Benny Snell is the fucking another once again a lock. Like, I don't care if he isn't seeing the ball as much as he should be at 1,400. As long as he gets like 10 carries and a couple targets, I'll be happy with that. You got Jalen Samuels, Anthony McFarland, and then you got Derek Watt at 200. Now, the only reason I bring up Derek Watt is because, Ellie, you did a nice little first touchdown prop bet with Derek Watt a few weeks ago, and they targeted him on the goal line. They ran him out. He had a little fucking slant pattern from I think he was out wide, had a little slant pattern into the end zone from like the 2-yard line. He was wide the fuck open. Big Ben didn't target him. He should have caught that ball. You would have won a shitload of money. Look, I'm not telling you to start and play Derek Watt, but I'm saying he has opportunity to potentially be that $200 guy that sees a random target here or there on a play on the end zone. Anyways, how are you handling James Conner and Benny Snell? Are you looking at any of these other guys at all?
No, I'm not. I'm looking at James Conner and Benny Snell. They'll only be in lineups that I don't have Singletary or the other fucking guy.
Yeah.
So look, I'll have out of these 4 running backs, I'll have one in lineups that have a running back. Otherwise, I'm going to be prioritizing both teams' passing attacks. Derek Watt, honestly, or TJ Watt, whatever the fuck Watt it is, right? I don't know Watt's Watt, but sorry guys, I got kids. These are dad jokes. I get it. Look, he's, I mean, $200. You can literally throw him in one lineup. And if he scores a touchdown, he scores a touchdown. If not, I mean, you're probably not going to do well with that lineup anyway. So fuck it, right? Like it's not terrible.
Yeah.
Now, granted, in 20 max, I don't know if you need to get that deep, but if you're running 150, sure, hell yeah, get a couple lineups with them in. But no, as far as the Pittsburgh side of the ball, right? Some James Conner, just given his price and his projected ownership, does seem like I'll have a little bit of exposure to him. But Benny Snell at 1,400, if I'm going to have to choose a guy from the backfield, it's probably going to be him. Even if he gets his 5 projected points, until there's more value that clearly opens up, I think he might be one of the value plays to be looking at for tomorrow night.
Yeah, I'm not confident in him. Week 11, last time that James Conner played, James Conner got about 68% of the snaps. Benny Snell only 13%. He ran no routes. He wasn't targeted really. So it's scary if James Conner does start to play him. We just don't know. Like, it's just all a crapshoot. I'm more likely to just say, you know what? I don't want to even touch this. If anything, I'm just going to go with James Conner a little bit. And it's based on ownership. So if he's under 30% owned, like he's projected to be, that's going to be really tempting. Just like the other side of the ball with Singletary. If Singletary's under 20%, he's even more tempting simply because of the price. But to me, James Conner, if he's around that ownership, I actually kind of like him. I'm not confident in it. I'm more likely to fade him based on his ownership. But to me, I'm just not excited about either side of the ball when it comes to running backs. And I like it. I'm probably going to set a rule to max at 1. I usually don't set a lot of rules on Showdown, but I will for sure for this matchup. Definitely. Anything else to add to the running back position in general? What are your overall thoughts? I mean, it's not a very appealing position for this matchup, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not high on it. I agree with your max 1 out of the 4, and I'm just going to be prioritizing the passing attack of both teams.
All right, let's move over to the passing attack for the Pittsburgh here. You got Deontay Johnson at 9,000, which is actually a pretty good price for him. He was priced up to over 10, or I think it was at 10K or over 10K previously. You got Juju Smith-Schuster at 7,000, Chase Claypool at 8,400, which is pretty interesting to me, and James Washington at 2,600. So Deontay Johnson at 9,000, he's clearly the number 1 guy here when it comes to targets, receptions, all that stuff. He's not necessarily scoring as many touchdowns as we'd like, but Deontay Johnson is the number 1 guy. I think at 9,000, it's a pretty good price. Juju Smith-Schuster at 7,000, he's the number 2 guy. I love that price for him. He's boom or bust, definitely sort of a tournament play along with Chase Claypool, but the ownership for all of these guys is spread out a little bit. You don't have, your typical your typical number 1 wide receiver in the NFL, sort of 50 to 60% ownership like you would with Devontae Adams, or I'm not comparing these guys to them, but what I'm trying to say is it's spread out enough that you can still get leverage by playing Deontay Johnson. You could still play him in 60% of your lineups and still be double the field almost. So how are you handling all 4 of these guys? James Washington had a touchdown last week. Is that right? Yep. Yes. So how are you handling all these guys? What's your favorite play? I mean, James Washington at 2,600 seems like a pretty good dart throw because we're going to need value here.
Yeah, I'm going to go work way backwards actually on this one. I'm with you on James Washington. 2,600. I'll probably have a decent amount of him. I think he's in a good spot. And here's the thing: is he has that he has game breaking speed, right? So he has the ability to take the top off of defense, and with all those other guys that they have on the offensive side of the ball, I think that's just a threat that's going to be hard to account for. So he will have the potential to catch a deep pass and take it into the end zone. Now, with that said, I think the other three, right? I will have at least one of them in every single lineup.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm probably going to be leaning towards a 3-3 build or a 4-2 Pittsburgh build tomorrow, where I get Big Ben, and then two of these pass catchers, and probably Eric Ebron if I can afford it.
Yeah.
Right. I think Deontay Johnson is obviously going to get a shitload of targets.
Yeah.
Juju Smith-Schuster had 10 last week. Chase Claypool is the only guy who's kind of trended down when it comes to overall target share. But again, I don't know if that matters. With Chase Claypool, yeah, he's their third receiver or whatever, but he gets he has the ability to make the most of his opportunities. So he's a more physical guy, he's a fast guy as well. So when he gets the ball, he can do some things that Deontay Johnson and Juju can't do. But again, they treat the short pass game like it's a run game. So I don't think you're doing anything wrong getting as much exposure as you possibly can to at least one of these guys. I'll probably have two in every single one of my lineups, and just fade the running backs. Yeah. Now, Chase Claypool is an interesting one because right now it looks like Tre'Davious White is expected to cover him.
Yeah.
If that's the case, if that's really what we're going to be looking at, if that's the matchup that we're going to see tomorrow night, then I may kind of tone back a little bit of my exposure on Chase Claypool. Yeah. But given the fact that he had such a rough week last week, I think there's a recency bias that's going to drop his ownership. So I think he becomes a unique and valuable potential captain play because Deontay Johnson's going to get 10% ownership there. Juju's probably going to get 6 or 7. But Chase Claypool is not getting as many targets as those guys, so I think he could be lost a little bit, and then get lost a little bit more with Tre'Davious White covering him,
and his
one
price,
of the better corners,
and his price is priced up.
Exactly. So if you're paying, you're going to pay up for Deontay, and you're probably going to pay down for Juju. Honestly, I think you're just as well off doing a Chase Claypool stack with James Washington and Big Ben, and you can grab Stephon and Josh Allen back the other way.
Yeah.
So. I'll have a lot of these guys. Again, I'm going to be prioritizing the passing games of both sides. And I think I'm going to leave more of my Steelers players in my player pool simply because it's a little bit harder to kind of guess who's going to get the love on this side of the ball. So I'm going to rotate my exposure in and get probably 2 of each in every lineup.
The interesting thing is right now, I know it's the day before, so things will become more clear as we get closer to lock tomorrow on Sunday. But right now, Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool are projected right around the same ownership. So Juju is projected for 4 more fantasy points-ish, and Juju is $1,400 cheaper. So as we get closer, I expect Juju's ownership to inflate and Claypool's to go down. If that's the actual case, then I like Claypool. If it stays around the same, just give me Juju. Juju is the better play, like no doubt.
Yeah.
He's the better play here. Based on his price, based on his targets, based on his snaps, he is the better play. But we're not just playing the best plays here. We got to use leverage. We got to use ownership. We got to use salary. So when it comes to that, if Claypool is lower owned, give me a shitload of Claypool. And like I always say, if he actually gets that 40% of those snaps and he just has a bad day, close the laptop and move on. But I like the opportunity for him because he has home run ability, and I don't think that they're going to just completely ignore this guy, considering how they pass the ball 53 plus times sometimes, or 50 plus times. He's going to get opportunity with that many fucking attempts. He just is. There's no doubt about it. All right.
Well, and dude, the drops, right? I mean, who was not targeted last week? Chase Claypool. So he wasn't who Matt Tomlin was referring to when he's talking about drops. So I mean, that's another thing to keep in mind too. So I'm with you, man. I think I really think Juju or Claypool are going to be kind of the key to this slate.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I think the Steelers side of the ball, if you figure out potentially the two guys that go off, I think usually, in my opinion, it's going to be two guys on this team because of how many times they actually pass the ball. If you figure out those two guys, you're going to win a lot of money. All right, so let's move over to the other side of the ball here. You've got Stephon Diggs, who, like even with a relatively, I wouldn't say quiet game last week, it just wasn't the sexiest game ever for him. He didn't score, but he still got targeted 11 times. He got 10 receptions and 92 yards. He's at 10K straight up. He still scored 19 fantasy points. And that's going to be in the optimal, most likely, for a wide receiver. And he's actually down in price. He was 10.8K for that game. Now he's 10K. So I like Stephon Diggs. We talked about it last week. Just give me all Stephon Diggs. If he shows up in 70+% of my lineups, I'm not going to fight that. I really not. Especially considering he's projected right now to be around 40%. That's just way too low, in my opinion. I'm going to double it, most likely. Cole Beasley at 7,600. We joked about it before. He's going to get 46 receptions for 14 yards and a touchdown and end up in the optimal. Potentially, that's just who he is. He's at 7,600. Good option. I think because of recency bias, because he had a good game last week, he's going to be a little bit higher owned than maybe he should be because he doesn't have the highest upside every week. Gabriel Davis is another great option. 5K. He had a pretty good game last week. He had a touchdown, 3 receptions for 68 yards. He's at 5K. Isaiah McKenzie. He had a touchdown, 2 receptions in that game, and he was at $200 last week. We called that one out, and it worked out well. And he scored 11 fantasy points at $200. Now he's at $1,800, which is the price he should have been. That's why we were so high on him. At $200 for this guy was stupid. $1,800 is probably right around. Still lower than I think you should be. I think you should be in the 2 or 3K area. I know that he's the 4th wide receiver, so it's hard to spread the ball around like that. But what are your thoughts on the Diggs, Beasley, Davis, McKenzie setup here on the wide receiver side for Buffalo?
I'll start from the bottom again. McKenzie, I just don't want any of at that price. Again, I think I might rather just get exposure to James Washington and see if I can save a little bit of money elsewhere. So I probably have much exposure, if any, to him. I like Gabriel Davis a lot at 5K. I think he has the opportunity to get some work, and he's going to get a few targets. It's just hard because I think it's either him or Cole Beasley. You can't really run both of them in the same lineup.
Yeah.
They are fairly negatively correlated from what I can tell. But again, I mean, if you think those are the two that are going to get all the volume, then put them in both your lineups. But I mean, even Gabriel Davis, even saying that, he's still at 15.8 last week fantasy points and then 16.9 the week before, right?
Yeah.
He's making the best of his opportunities. He's only getting 3 or 4 targets a game, a handful of them. He has one game where he got more than 5 this season. So again, I think he's more of a riskier GPP play, but I think he provides some upside given the fact that he's catching touchdowns. So I think he's interesting at 5K. Cole Beasley, he's normally I would say he's a little bit expensive for my taste here at 7,600. But if he gets another 12 targets, I just don't see how you can have a lineup without him. The optimal will have him. So this is going to be another situation where I kind of just rotate in a couple different pieces, and I might have to go 3-3 because I'm going to want some stacks with Diggs and Beasley, Diggs and Davis, maybe a couple with Beasley and Davis. I just don't know how ballsy I am to fade Diggs. But, yeah, man, I think you're going to need to kind of just bend some rules, forcing some of these guys into lineups until you get a couple builds that you're comfortable with. And I would say about Stephon Diggs, since he's been on the Buffalo Bills, he's better than he was on the Vikings. And that's saying something. So, he really coming in less than 50%, Stephon Diggs?
Let me check. Utility, under he's the 3rd highest owned guy. I think ownership is really spread out this week, so it's a little difficult right now. But yeah, he's around 40% owned, and around under 15% in the captain.
So yeah, I'll lock him. I don't care if I lose because Stephon Diggs doesn't get enough targets. That's an L I'm willing to take.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll easily double the field at that number. I really don't give a shit. He's just he has too much big play upside. 11 targets, 9, 11, 12, 9, 11, 8, 16. His lowest number of targets was in week 3 with 6. So and he still had a touchdown, 15 points, fantasy points. So yeah, I mean I don't know what to say here. You put in as many. I am prioritizing the passing game of both these teams, and I'm going to try and get as many of these receivers as I possibly can.
And I don't think that's a controversial statement. Like that, it's pretty obvious, and maybe you could find some leverage by going with some of the running backs. I just don't feel comfortable doing that, to be honest. Maybe I'll get a little bit around the field of the running backs, but yeah, you're right. I'm going to go higher on the wide receivers. Diggs as one of my core plays is going to be for sure. I'm going to have both quarterbacks and Diggs in pretty much every one of my lineups. Like that's just going to be how I start building. Stephon Diggs, he's getting, Gabriel Davis, interestingly enough, has been, last week he got 97% of the snaps and Stephon Diggs only got 92%. So Gabriel Davis is a guy that's underpriced, in my opinion. Now look, Cole Beasley had 71% of the snaps and Gabriel Davis had 97%, but the target share, swayed heavily towards Beasley, obviously. Gabriel Davis had only 10% of the targets and Beasley had 28%. Now that was just one game. Things can obviously change, but like I say, opportunity and showdown is a big deal. So if a guy's on the field almost 100% of the plays at $5,000, Gabriel Davis is a great fucking option in my opinion. Yeah. I don't think that's controversial at all. All right, so let's move over to tight ends for the Bills. We've got Dawson Knox at 4,600. I get these guys mixed up, dude. I get Dawson Knox and Tyler Kroft mixed up. Like I don't know. I think Kroft scored the touchdown last week, right? Yeah, he had the touchdown. Dawson Knox. Oh, they both had a touchdown. That's why I'm confused. That's interesting.
Wait, they both had a touchdown last
did
year?
They?
I thought one was COVID.
Oh, I'm sorry. See what I mean? So Tyler Kroft is COVID boy. He's been out since week 9. And Dawson Knox scored a touchdown last week. Okay, that makes sense. Now I'm getting it all right. So Dawson Knox at 4,600 is the number one guy. Obviously, I don't really care too much about him. I know he scored a touchdown last week, but I know he had 12 fantasy points, and yes, that's pretty good for his price, especially considering he was at 4K last week. But if you look at his numbers this season, they're just not very impressive. He had a ceiling game last week. I don't expect him to duplicate that. Do you care about any of these guys? We've never really been high on the tight ends here for this team.
Yeah, I don't mind a little bit of Dawson Knox just because there isn't really another option for them. But again, I think I'd rather just spend $400 more and go with Gabriel Davis. But I think it's going to come down to what you can afford to throw in your builds. Yeah, I really don't give a shit about the tight end position on this side of the ball. Again, I'd rather just pay for Peter Gabriel. Yeah,
so just talk about. I mean, look, I'm looking up Tyler Kroft's snap count before he was injured here. He did have a 2 touchdown game week 3. He had a 64-yard game week 7. He actually has a decent, he has a decent output in my opinion that he could have, and it looks like he's going to be playing this week. I didn't see him on the injury report, so I'm assuming he's coming back. At $1,000, do you have any interest in him?
No, I mean the problem is we're not going to see him on the injury report because he was COVID inactive, so they have to reactivate him.
Yeah.
It's like it's like IR type stuff. So,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to play. I really don't have any interest in it. And if he does play, I think that just crosses the entire tight end position for Buffalo out of my player pool, just because it's going to water down some of the exposure or the opportunities that some are going to get.
If Tyler Kroft's activated, I think I'm going to have a little bit of him. I mean, he has more touchdowns than Dawson Knox this year, and he's missed 4 or 5 games in a row here. So I think you have to consider playing Tyler Kroft just because of the price, but I'm not going to be high on him. It doesn't look like he's getting any ownership. So look, basically what I'm saying could be complete bullshit because he might not even play, but just keep an eye on that. Overall speaking, I don't really like anybody here. I'm going to concentrate. I'd rather concentrate for Dawson Knox at 4,600. I'd rather go with the running back. I'd rather go with one of these backup running backs or one of these lower price guys that are going to be lower owned who have more opportunity. Let's move over to the other side of the ball with Pittsburgh. You've got Eric Ebron at 6,400. You've got Vance McDonald at $200 again. Vance McDonald at $200. He hasn't played since week 9, so I'm pretty sure he's still on the COVID list. Like you were saying, we just got to wait for maybe an activation on him, but probably not even worth mentioning unless he's activated, obviously, so keep an eye on that. Eric Ebron, 6,400. This guy's always a threat. He's super athletic. He's always one of my favorite plays just because he has that upside for multiple touchdowns in a game. And if you look at his fantasy box score here, it's not bad. He's got a lot of green going on here. 6,400, I feel like he might be kind of forgotten about. What do you think about Ebron?
Yeah, I love Eric Ebron. I think he's going to give you a lot of upside. I mean, Jesus, dude, how are these guys getting so many targets? Like, how many times are they really passing? Because he has 11 targets in back-to-back weeks. And he's trended up consistently pretty much all year in the target area. And it looks like he's making the most of his opportunities, right? You throw a touchdown on either one of those performances against Baltimore or Washington, and all of a sudden you're at 19, 20 fantasy points. So I think he's a great play. And at that salary, he's probably going to come pretty low owned. He's going to fly under the radar. I mean, think about just pivoting off of Juju and dropping down to Eric Ebron. I mean, you're getting the same amount of targets, maybe the same upside, but it's definitely a viable play. And we talked about this on the Washington slate, right? He has the ability to run up the sideline. He is one of the more athletic tight ends in the league. He's just a big guy who plays wide receiver essentially. So they have him over at tight end. I think he's a great play, and especially if Vance McDonald's out. What are you supposed to do? I mean, you're gonna run a tight end set, so you're gonna have to put him in the game. So I think he's very much in play at 6,400. Again, I honestly, dude, he could be an interesting captain as well if his ownership comes in low enough, and you might not even have to get crazy with him. Yeah, at 6,400, you could throw him in and be able to jam in some consistent pieces there. So I think he's a very interesting play all around the board. Vance McDonald, if somehow he does get activated and ends up playing, I will never shy away from playing Vance McDonald. He's done too much for me in years past, just out of fucking blue. I can't even recall, but he has the upside to do something. And at $200, I'll put him in a lineup or two.
Yeah. So if you look at Eric Ebron, his target share on the season is around 16%, which is tied with Chase Claypool as the number 3 on the team. But if you look at his target share since Vance McDonald hasn't been playing, it's been, week 12, 21%, which is number 2 on the team. Week 13, 20%, which is number 2 on the team. Week 11, 15%. So basically what I'm trying to say is Vance McDonald had about 4% target share on the season. Those targets are just going directly to Eric Ebron because Eric Ebron's on the field the whole time. So expect Eric Ebron to be, the number 3 targeted player on this team. And at 6,400, even, he's $2,000 cheaper than Chase Claypool. He doesn't have necessarily the upside, but he has more opportunity, much more opportunity than Claypool. So to me, I'd rather just pivot from Claypool to Ebron at half the ownership, or I'm not half, but like 10% less ownership, and just get some leverage there for sure. All right, so let's move over to kickers and defense. So kickers and defense here, we've got, where is the other kicker here? So I have, what kickers do you have listed? I have 2 kickers for Pittsburgh. I think, is Boswell injured? Is that what we're dealing with here? What's going on with Boswell? Do you have any information on that?
Well, let's see.
On Lineup HQ?
He's in my player pool, 3,800.
He's in my player pool too, but I'm getting two kickers for I'm getting Chris Boswell at 3,800 and I'm getting Matthew Wright at 3,800, and they're both projected for this around the same amount of points. So to me, that points out to me that Boswell, some issue with Boswell. I didn't see him on the injury report.
8 lineup HQ had him unprojected.
All right, so Fantasy Cruncher and Awesemo has him projected for some points. So I think that's just a waiting game. So just keep an eye on Boswell. I don't quite understand why he's did he get injured?
I thought he hurt his.
You know what? I think he did get injured. I remember hearing somebody talk about that. So look, we apologize, guys. I don't fucking care about kickers at all. I think it's the dumbest bullshit position. You got Justin Tucker, who's the best kicker of all time almost, shanking a couple of kicks. It just doesn't matter in most cases, especially this year. And I know that's maybe not the most popular opinion, but to me, I just think you should get rid of kickers from fantasy in general and maybe defenses. But to me, just keep an eye on who's going to get the start. If Matthew Wright, I don't even know who the fuck that is. I've never heard of that guy. If he starts at 3,800, they're the same price. So just fucking switch him out if you have a bunch of Chris Boswell or whatever.
Yeah, why is Tyler Bass cheaper than both of them? I mean,
I don't know.
Look, I think Tyler. I don't give a shit about the Steelers kickers. I care about Tyler Bass at 3,600.
Yeah,
so,
dude.
Look, I'm fine with playing him.
Dude, okay, let's look at this. I usually don't show stats for kickers, but look, Tyler Bass at 3,600. He's got 10 points, 11 points, 18 points, 15 points. Then he had like a 6-point game. Then he had a 23-point game. He's on a roll lately. And look, I don't know if that even matters for kickers. Obviously, confidence is huge. It's a big deal. But does he get opportunity? Well, he does, obviously. He has, let's see, he has a handful of kicks a game. He has multiple 50-yarder attempts in a couple games. So I like Tyler Bass at 3,600 a lot. And if he's under 20% owned, like he's projected to be, I like throwing Tyler Bass in because there's a situation where Buffalo gets stalled out a couple times, in the red zone, and they just have to kick a field goal because Pittsburgh defense is still a very good defense. So not to get too deep into this, but I think we both agree that Tyler Bass is the way to go. And if Boswell does play, I don't trust it because he did get a little tweak in some area of his body, and to me that lowers confidence. And I would rather just, instead of going with Matthew Wright, who I don't know who the hell that is, I'd rather just go with Tyler Bass if I'm going to do any kickers at all. What do you think?
Yeah, and I mean, keep it simple, dude. Like, when it comes to this Steelers offense, right? Is Matthew Wright or fucking Chris Boswell, are they pass catchers? No. If Ben Roethlisberger is going to throw the ball 54 fucking times, I want someone who is going to catch the ball one of X amount of those 54 times. So I don't give a shit about any other position on this team other than somebody that can catch passes. If Deontay Johnson has 18 targets, no touchdowns, and still ends up with 15 receptions, right, he's going to be in the optimal lineup. Deontay Johnson. I mean, look, if James Washington has 6 targets, 4 receptions, and 80 yards, he's going to be in the optimal. You have to get the pass catchers right from the Steelers. Yeah. So and I think playing Matthew Wright or Chris Boswell is going to impact your ability to do that, right?
Yeah.
Now if we look at them and they're under 10% owned, then sure, why not? But the ceiling's not there. Yeah. I think it is with Tyler Bass, right? And just to your point, the Steelers have a good defense. So if a drive stalls out on the 8-yard line, then you get a free 3 points. So yeah, I think he's an interesting play. But I don't think that your wide receivers or your pass catchers on the Steelers side of the ball are touchdown dependent just because of the pure volume they're going to get. I mean, imagine if Eric Ebron has 11 targets and catches all 11. That's 11 fucking points without a yard. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like, if he gets 10 yards, he all of a sudden has 12 points, and he had 1 touchdown. Like, it just doesn't make sense to water down your potential output because you want to fucking play a $3,800 kicker. That's just all I have to say about this.
If the Steelers continue down that path of throwing the ball over 50 times, which I'm sure they will, there's just no reason to target a kicker. They're just not. They're spreading the ball out so much. Big Ben's going to have 34 completions minimum, probably maybe even in the 40s. He always has a 60% completion percentage, most likely, unless he's having a fucking terrible game and they're getting blown out or something, which I don't see happening. So 40 completions spread across the board. I mean, that's, 10 receptions for the top 10 plus receptions for the top guys on this offense. So those points can be allocated in other areas as opposed to going with the kickers. Now, when it comes to Tyler Bass, obviously give him a shot. I like him at that ownership. Steelers defense at 4,200 and Bills at 3,400. Steelers defense is always worth a shot, especially with Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen is maybe getting over the hump for his stupid ass plays that he does, pitching the ball back in the playoffs, random ass bullshit. I think he's kind of over that hump, but he's still the same guy. He has the opportunity to throw a couple picks and maybe fumble the ball. He carries the ball quite a bit. So some fumbles here and there, some turnovers are just most likely going to happen. With the Steelers defense, they're not projected too much higher than the Bills defense, which is interesting to me. I'm likely to stray from both defenses because I think this is going to be a little bit higher scoring game. What do you think quickly on the defenses?
I agree with you. I think the Steelers defense is going to be a little bit higher owned than they should be. And at 4,200, I just don't care. I just don't care to play them. Bills defense, maybe they could be in play. Depends on what kind of struggles that you're expecting from the Steelers. But again, I just really don't have interest. At 3,400, I'd rather play Tyler Bass. So I don't give a shit about the defenses this game.
All right, let's move on to our fade of the night here.
What's your name? Tony! Fuck you, Tony!
Tell me about your pick, Ellie.
Yeah, I mean, it's ballsy, but I think there's going to be some recency bias there. And with his price tag kind of going up, I think Gabriel Davis has a little bit more upside just considering the fact he's probably going to be a shitload less owned. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm going to have Cole Beasley exposure. I'm just be slightly under the field. And to be fair, this is also a placeholder. I mean, if Gabriel Davis, sprains his ankle on the way to the fucking team bus, then obviously I'm going to have to play Cole Beasley. And I don't know, man. I think I'm going to lean more towards the stacking as much of the receivers that I can get from Pittsburgh and just doing Josh Allen and one of the catchers on this side of the ball. I think you can pretty much capture most of the volume by doing that, unless, of course, Cole Beasley has a game like he did last week.
Yeah.
But even just looking at his output, right? There's games where he's getting three targets, and then all of a sudden he's up to 9 and 11.
Yeah.
I don't want to bank on any of that, but that's the kind of inconsistency that can really crush you if you're overexposed. So I think I'll come with the field or slightly under and let it roll.
I agree with you. I would rather pivot to Gabriel Davis. He's cheaper. He has higher upside, in my opinion. I know that Cole Beasley gets a lot of targets and receptions and can score maybe a touchdown if he's lucky. I just like Gabriel Davis at that price a lot better, and especially with the ownership, because you're right. Recency bias is going to kick in. And at 7,400, a guy who caught the ball, 11 times or 10 times or whatever that was, a lot of people are going to play Cole Beasley. So I'd rather just, spread away from him. So for me, James Conner is my fade of the night. He's most likely going to play. To me, I just don't like the rushing attack anymore on this team. I like Benny Snell a decent amount at that price, but my pivot is just strictly just going away from the run game in general. If anything, I'll get a little bit of Devin Singletary instead. I'm not going to have any, like Ellie, like you said earlier, I'm not going to have two running backs from at all from any team. Typically speaking, I like to have a running back in the backup, or like I'll negatively correlate, one running back and the opposing running back. In this game, I don't want to do that. I want to just find those 50 plus targets that are going to be out there. I want to find those. And I don't think James Conner is going to get the opportunity that he should, especially at that price. If he was $1,000 or $2,000 cheaper, then it would be a different conversation. If he comes in around 20% ownership, if the rest of the field is kind of thinking what I'm thinking, then I might change up my opinion on this. But for right now, James Conner is just going to be my fade of the night. So let's move on to Crown Their Ass. This is our favorite captain choice for Draftkings. Denny Green, rest in peace.
Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass.
Ellie, Chase Claypool is your captain choice. Tell me about it.
Yeah, man. This is a placeholder. I think he's gonna largely, placeholder for now. I think he's gonna largely come in unnoticed, just given the fact that his pricing is so weird between Deontay Johnson and Juju. And so I think it'll balance out a little bit more, and the ownership will trend a little bit more towards Juju. But again, I think you're going to have to put in one of these kind of mid-price captain plays. I like Chase Claypool. I like Juju. I like Eric Ebron. Right? That's kind of the price range that I'm looking at. And again, I don't think Chase was one of those people that was involved in the whole don't drop passes thing that came from week. So maybe Ben decides to target him a little bit more so that he doesn't have to necessarily worry about that. But again, as long as you have one of the best catchers in this position, just not Deontay Johnson because of his price tag. Even then, at 9,000, it's not awful, but I expect him to be chalky. I just think that the volume potential for any one of these pass catchers in that spot it's too hard to ignore. So Claypool is kind of the least beneficial. He gets the least amount of targets out of the group, but he has the ability to take the top off the defense. So I think he's a viable option there. But I don't hate your pick either. You want to tell me about him?
Yeah, I don't hate your pick either. I think basically our picks are interchangeable. To me, I think 7,000 for Juju Smith-Schuster. If they come in, if Chase Claypool comes in at the same ownership, you just got to go to Juju. You just got to. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Claypool's ownership will dip. Juju's will rise as we get closer, as those afternoon games finish and we get more ownership projections in. I think you're going to see Claypool in the low 20s and Juju in the 30s. And then, probably in the 8% captain for Juju, and Chase will be under 5%. That's just my prediction on it. If that's the case, I might pivot a little bit more, but I like Juju a lot simply because of his opportunity, his targets. He's the number 2 targeted guy on this team, and there's those 50 plus potential targets out there. I think he's going to get a handful of them, and he's going to get the opportunity. Both of these plays are, to me, I'm going to go, maybe out of all my lineups, I'm going to have like a little bit more Juju than Claypool. But if Claypool's ownership comes in super low, I'm going to switch it. I'm going to pivot. So both of these guys are good options as of now. I don't see that changing. I'm going to have a lot of both of them because I don't think it's going to change that drastically. It just depends on who I'm going to get more of. Claypool right now at 8,400 with the same ownership. Don't like it as much. Just keep an eye on that ownership. There's plenty of great sites out there that'll give you those projections. Be sure to subscribe to them. It's not that expensive because ownership is really fucking important in Showdown. It's important everywhere, but specifically in Showdown, you got to really pay attention to that stuff. All right, man. So let's move over to our lineup build. Who do you want to put in first for captain?
Let's go Juju, man.
Let's just see how. Let's feel it out and see if that $1,400 price difference makes that big of a difference. You know what I mean? So let's put Juju in captain. Let's put in our core here. We don't even need to talk about this. Let's go Diggs, Roethlisberger. That leaves us 2 positions. We've got about 3,200 per position. We should get one more pass catching option from the Steelers, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we should probably go with the guy like. Should we go with James Washington here?
I like him. Yeah.
It leaves us 3,900. And look, I know this is a little bit of an interesting pick, but you could definitely go Tyler Bass here. You can go. That leaves you with a couple $100 left over. I don't think that this could be a little bit chalky. Like maybe on the I don't think there's gonna be a lot of dupes for this lineup because you've got James Washington and Tyler Bass in the same lineup. But it's a little, if you're going, in a tournament with 150,000+ entries, this might be a little bit duped, maybe around the 20 dupe area. So, is there anybody else at 3,900 left on the Bills or even on Pittsburgh that you would want to go with? Benny Snell, Isaiah McKenzie. those are kind of our best options here. Like, you know.
No, I'm not. I'm not really high on those guys. I like. I actually really do like the play that we had with the kicker,
Tyler Bass.
Tyler Bass.
Yeah. Okay, so let's try this real quick. So let's get rid of James Washington and Tyler Bass. Let's go with like a Isaiah McKenzie type. I'm sorry, not Isaiah McKenzie, but what am I looking for here? Dude, this is the worst fucking app. Like I hate this. I cannot build with this. Gabriel Davis.
Snell?
Gabriel Davis is who I was thinking about. So that leaves us with 1,600. Can we get anybody we can get fucking Benny Snell.
Yeah.
I like that lineup a little bit better.
Yeah, again, I look, I'm right on with you, right? I think that this is going to be an interesting way to build, and it's interesting that you did this because I'm just thinking now. I mean, even if Claypool still might be a little bit too expensive to do what we need to do. So,
yeah, exactly. Because there's just not enough value.
I'm starting to like Juju.
Yeah, so and I think as we get closer to lock, people are going to realize that this is the better lineup, and they're going to get more Juju in the captain. So look, I like this lineup. You've got Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and Gabriel Davis. Like Josh Allen's going to get you rushing opportunities. Diggs and Davis will get you most of the passing targets on the team. When we run it back with Big Ben, Juju, and Benny Snell. I'd like to get another wide receiver in there, like I would like to get a James Washington or another wide receiver in there, but it's just not possible unless we fade unless we fade Diggs or we fade Roethlisberger, and I would rather not do that. So let's just clear this out. Let's go with our other captain choice here at 8,400, Chase Claypool, and let's see what we can build. No, that's not what I want to do here. Where's he at? Claypool. Okay, so in my opinion, for this lineup, I think we're going to have to fade either Diggs, Big Ben, or Josh Allen. So do we want to fade Big Ben here?
Yeah.
All right, because I'm not fading Josh Allen. I'm just not doing it.
Yeah, I'm not either. And I think we're also going to have to fade Deontay Johnson, but I think we need to jam in, obviously, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and then Juju Smith-Schuster. 7K, he might just be a lock for me tomorrow night, man. Like, I don't...
Yeah. So Claypool...
I'm going to end up with, like, 3 lineups.
Yeah. So, look, let's talk about this for a minute. So, Claypool and Juju without Big Ben. So, how... I know it's not it's negatively correlated when it comes to, obviously, Big Ben is getting those touchdown passes, he's getting those yards. How does Claypool and Juju end up in a winning lineup without Big Ben? Like, what kind of a game script do we need here for that?
Claypool gets rushing upside, man. He has a rushing touchdown this year. He might actually have 2. But I think that he has the potential to get involved. And again, I mean, he only needs 2 or 3 opportunities and he can take it to the house. So if Claypool has 2 receptions for 80 yards and a touchdown or 2,
yeah,
he could be the optimal captain. I mean, Juju can still get 10, 15 targets and receptions and 120 yards. And I mean, you're still only looking at a total of 15, 17 total completions from Big Ben. So
yeah,
there's definitely a script in which that happens. So I don't think that that's necessarily too crazy.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, it's more of the choice. Like, I don't know that I'm more comfortable fading Josh Allen over Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, exactly. So look, I want to get Devin Singletary in this lineup here. I think he's going to be under-owned. He's middle range price. I think he's going to slip under the radar and it'd be way too under-owned and can have you a touchdown or 2 here. So it leaves us with $2,400 remaining. We've got guys like Isaiah McKenzie, Benny Snell, Tyler Kroft, and that's pretty much all I would consider. You've got Vance McDonald if he plays. So out of... Man, that sucks. We could have got James Washington if we had 200 extra bucks. That sucks ass. That's interesting. How do you want to handle this? Do we want to go Benny? I don't think I would. If these are the 2 lineups I'm building, I don't want to go Benny Snell in both of them. You know? Yeah,
I think Isaiah McKenzie isn't terrible in this particular play. 4-2. It's
the reverse.
It's still
it's a
risky.
2-4. It's risky as hell. For sure.
I don't know, man. So look, let's check this out. Right, pull out Diggs and swap him out for Cole Beasley.
And then we've got 4,800. So that gives it doesn't really give us anything. It doesn't really give us enough.
No, not really.
So look, let's try this.
Unless we wanted Gabriel Davis.
Yeah, that's another 4-2. And in this case, I think if Claypool and Juju, if Claypool's in your, and if both of these guys are in your lineup and you don't have Big Ben, you're assuming the running game is going to be most likely more prevalent and Big Ben's going to get less opportunity to spread the ball around. So, you know, what if you went with the James Conner here? You got 4,400 remaining. We get one more Buffalo player in here, potentially. You got Tyler Bass. You got James Washington. You got Isaiah McKenzie. I mean, look, if you threw Tyler Bass in here, it's a pretty well-rounded lineup. You got Claypool, Connor, Schuster, Josh Allen, Singletary, and Bass. It's a little bit different build than I would like with the pass attack on Buffalo side, but I kind of like this lineup here.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's going to be tough to build with Claypool at the captain just because of how well priced some of these other players are. But
yeah,
again, I don't think you got to get too crazy in some of these. You only need 3 or 4 lineups with these different captains, and this honestly isn't a bad build, right?
Yeah.
Normally we're for the show we've been saying we're not going to have both running backs in the lineup, but I don't think this is terrible. And even then, I mean, you can still pivot off of James Conner, go down to Eric Ebron if you want.
Yeah,
now again,
exactly.
that's scary as hell because you think
don't have Big Ben.
We're still fading Big Ben, but again, I mean, look, I mean, if we have all the right pass catchers, there's a winning lineup that could potentially result in not having Big Ben simply because you have all the volume on the other side by just having the receivers. But again, man, like I think we're just gonna have to keep playing around with the builds here because again, it's a little bit tight. And
yeah,
I thought it was gonna be a little easier to build with Claypool in there, but I don't think so. I think Juju Smith-Schuster might end up being the optimal captain.
Yeah, me too. But because the story this tells is this is an under game. This game hits the under. Significantly less than the under, in my opinion, because you can have Claypool with a touchdown, Juju Smith-Schuster with a touchdown, James Conner with the touchdown, or a shitload of rushing opportunities, and that puts Big Ben on the outside looking in when it comes to actually making the optimal. And then you have Josh Allen with maybe a rushing touchdown or two, and he spreads the ball out a little bit more with Singletary with the goal line touchdown. You know, that kind of a situation as to opposed to our other Juju captain lineup where the ball is spread out and is passed a lot. So, like I said, if you don't like this game script, then just don't play this lineup. I don't particularly like the game script, but I think it's in the range of outcomes for sure. So this lineup I will play because I think it's actually a little bit more contrarian than we think it is. All right, man. So what are your final thoughts here on this game? Where do you think the score is going to end up? And just give me some random thoughts on your building. How are you going to approach your building? When ownership comes out, what are you looking for?
I think this is a 27-17 Buffalo. I think it might end up being a little bit more high scoring than that, but I think 27-17 is kind of a safe bet. But yeah, man, I think my building is just more balanced than I usually am in some other sites. And if I stack a little bit heavier, it's going to be on the Pittsburgh side of the ball. Prioritize as much of the pass catchers as you can in this game. There's a shitload of volume, and if you get those guys right, it's going to be hard to beat you.
Pass catchers are the way to go, in my opinion. If you want to be super crazy and contrarian, go with the running game, because I just don't think it's going to be popular at all, and for a reason. They're just not. They don't have very good running game. There's not a lot of opportunity there. At any given time, that could change. I think the Steelers are gonna. I think the Steelers are a little pissed off that they're not getting the respect they deserve. I know narrative is not the best thing to talk about when you're talking about DFS, but to me, these are grown men playing. They're professionals. You have an 11-1 team, a good team with a veteran Hall of Fame quarterback going against a young quarterback. I think that potentially the Steelers can get their juju back, no pun intended, and 34-21 sort of game here. I think that's how we're going to go. I think it's going to go with the under, and there's going to be a lot of passing attack across the board for both teams. You got to go Josh Allen. Most of your lineups have to get one or two of the wide receivers from Steelers. And Big Ben has the potential to be a little bit above the field for me, but I'm not gonna just strictly just lock him in. I know we talked about it at the beginning of this, that I want to have Big Ben in almost every lineup, but to me, I think you can still be above the field on him. I'm not going to be as high as Josh Allen. That's just my opinion. So anyways, guys, we're gonna right when we're done with this video, we're recording the quick slant. If you made it to the end of this video, you probably don't need to watch the quick slant, but check it out. Check out what we got. Subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.